Hello, I'm Joyce Barrett. Welcome to today's webinar. Webinars are brought to you through the generosity of Heritage Ohio supporters. We invite you to join us by visiting the Heritage Ohio website. Heritage Ohio's mission is helping people to save the places that matter, build community, live better. Today's presentation is on the AARP Community Challenge Grant Program. We will be taking questions at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please type it into the question box at any time, and then we'll go through them at the end. Later this afternoon, you will receive an email from GoToWebinar with a link to the recording of this webinar, which you are welcome to share. We also post our webinars on the Heritage Ohio YouTube channel the next day. Please notice in your control panel in the handout session, Doug has provided us with a copy of this PowerPoint with the flyer for the challenge grant and a couple of other documents that he'll be talking about there. Today, our speaker is Doug Tyack, the Associate Director for Outreach for AARP Ohio. In 2021, Doug became Ohio's lead for age-friendly and livable communities. Doug has worked for AARP since 2011. He has earned his bachelor's degree from Kent State and master's degree from University of Akron. And with that, I'm going to hand the controls over to Doug for today's presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Joyce, for that introduction. I appreciate it. And to all of you spending the time and listening, I appreciate you spending the time with me. I'm also glad that this is off camera because my beard is rather scraggly today and you kept me, I didn't have to shave. So thank you for that. So as Joyce mentioned, my name is Doug Tyack. I am on staff here at AARP for our Ohio office as the Associate State Director of Outreach and Advocacy. My role is I cover Northeast Ohio for our office and am responsible for conducting our social mission work and our engagement in about 25 counties of Northeast Ohio, and very recently added Northwest Ohio to my bailiwick as well. I'm coming to you in my role as our statewide lead for livable communities and age-friendly communities. And you're probably asking yourself what that means, and I will get to that here in a second. But basically, this presentation, I will provide an overview for you of what AARP's Livable Communities programs are, what an age-friendly community is, and then finally, how our challenge grant program, which is going on right now, that ties into our Livable Communities work and how you can access, how you can apply for challenge grant funds for 2022. So I just want to sort of start with a core understanding. So basically, and I'm not sure how everybody's comfortable with this information, but basically America is growing older rapidly. Like much of the rest of the developed world, the United States is facing a very unique challenge that humanity has not faced before, which is our population is getting older at a very rapid rate, and as folks are living longer and staying more active. So because of this issue, because of this opportunity, these issues require very unique solutions. And so when you think about America's two largest generations, the baby boomers and the millennials. I'm an old millennial at 1982 birth year. Boomers will turn 80 in 2026, and millennials will turn 50 in 2030. So the United States is undergoing a very rapid aging process, and there are lots of issues that come with that, and also lots of opportunities. When you think about Ohio, and this is, I apologize, it's a very small slide, but it's Scripps Gerontology does a great job of packing a lot of information into one slide. Ohio is projected through 2050 to age at a rate higher than most of the rest of the country. And through 2050, of Ohio's 88 counties, at least half of those 88 counties will have a population where 1/3 of that population is 60 and over. So as a state, we are working towards supporting a population that is growing older very quickly. So what do we know about those issues, and what do we know about older adults? And this is just an example of that, and I'll get to the rest of this information in a moment. But basically what we know about older adults, right, is that there's a lot that folks are still doing. Folks are still active, very much into their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even to the centennials or centenarians are very active still. And so what we know about some of the issues that fall within livable communities, older adults want to stay in their homes. They want to live in their communities. They want to stay connected to their family and friends. They want to stay connected to the neighborhoods they grew up in. And we know this, that at a national level, 8 in 10 say that it's important for them to stay in their community. In Ohio, that number is actually greater. We know that the communities that have done age-friendly assessments, older adults have, at a rate of 90 to 95%, have said they want to stay in their homes and connected to their communities long term. So this is just one of the challenges that a rapidly aging community provides us, is how do you provide safe and affordable housing? How do you ensure that there are programs and opportunities for older adults to stay connected to their communities in the level that they want to as they grow older? So that's where the AARP Livable Communities initiatives have come to play, have been put in place. And the goal for our Livable Communities programs is our programs seek to support older adults to live their best lives by working with local and state leaders to offer greater choice in housing, transportation, public spaces, and opportunities to engage in their community. In so doing, we work to create communities that work better for people of all ages. Think of it this way. If a community decides that their sidewalks are not accessible for a person in their 80s who may be wheelchair bound or has a walker, by upgrading that sidewalk, by upgrading the ability to walk through the community for that 80-year-old, they're also making that sidewalk and that community walkable for the 28-year-old new mom who has a stroller. Generally, strollers and wheelchairs have the same wheel width. So by looking at our communities, by looking at communities in Ohio and saying, okay, and across the country, how do we make them livable for older adults? We're also saying, how do we make them livable for younger folks who will someday be older adults and who most communities would like to have stay in their communities and become older adults over time in those communities. So that's the guiding principle behind our Livable Communities work. This is a national initiative. Our Livable Communities programming is delivered in all 50 states, plus the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and Washington, D.C. So within our Livable Communities work is one of the centerpieces is our network of age-friendly states and communities. In 2006, the World Health Organization identified that developed nations were growing older rapidly and decided that in looking at the issues that those nations would face, that they should connect those nations through the World Health Organization's network of age-friendly states and community, or network of communities. I apologize. In 2012, AARP became the WHO's sole partner in delivering age-friendly community development and programming in the United States. And so since 2012, we have been running at the national level the AARP network of age-friendly states and communities. Currently, there are 600 communities that are considered to be age-friendly and enrolled in our network, as well as 10 full states. And the age-friendly communities are built around the 8 domains of livability, as outlined by the World Health Organization there. And these initiatives, age-friendly initiatives, what they do is they provide a framework that help local leaders better engage residents and identify their needs and what is important to older adults, and then take action to ensure that the community is truly on the path to an age-friendly future. Those 600 communities that are enrolled, the 10 states that are enrolled in the network, are all delivering this framework in some capacity. So in Ohio, there are 15 communities that are registered, that are part of the age-friendly network currently. And we're always looking to grow that. So if you have any interest, you can reach out to me and I can help you through that. But there are currently the 15 communities in Ohio that are part of the network, and you can see them on the left here in the map. And a community earns an age-friendly designation as soon as they enroll in our network. And this is it's a process that involves the chief executive of that community submitting a letter and an application to the AARP Ohio office, which is then, once it's accepted by our national office, that community is officially designated as an age-friendly community. But by taking on this designation, the community is committing to a 5-year process, and that process implements a cycle of continuous improvement. And that's one of the handouts that I provided, is the cycle of continuous improvement. It's actually just a really good roadmap for delivering any kind of community-based work. It's not specific to the network of age-friendly communities work, but it is a nice guide, and it does outline well how this work goes forward. under age-friendly communities. So the cycle consists of assessing how livable older adults perceive the community to be across the 8 domains of livability, which are outdoor spaces and buildings, transportation, housing, social participation, respect and social inclusion, civic participation and employment, communication and information, community and health services. And there are some communities now that are actually offering or using a 9th domain, which is sustainability. When a community enrolls, they've committed to this 5-year process where they do an assessment and they ask the older adults in the community, how livable is our community? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Asking for, what are areas of opportunity? What are strengths? And then taking that assessment data, and in the 2nd year of the process, creating an action plan. And after that action plan is complete, in years 3, 4, and 5, the community then will implement that action plan. And at the end of year 5, review how the cycle did, what lessons did they learn, what improvements did they make, what could they do better, and then starting the process over again. So really, this is designed to be a continuous cycle of improvement, hence the name. But it's one that it's an effective model for communities engaging with older adults, especially, but also folks who in the community who will someday be older adults, to take a deep dive and a hard look at what are they doing right, what are they doing wrong, and how they can make their community as livable as possible for the residents of all ages, but also specifically for older adults. You can find more information on age-friendly initiatives in the handbook that's one of the additional resources. It's the age-friendly brochure. It takes a little deeper dive into what an age-friendly process looks like. And again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. My contact information will be included at the end. In addition to that, these are a number of the resources that AARP offers nationally. You can see our Livable Communities page where we have a ton of resources that you can download and access for free. Videos you can watch, trainings you can do. I also highly recommend, if you're interested in these issues, in enrolling to receive the Livable Communities newsletter, which is a weekly publication that goes out to about 100,000 readers each week, and it's mostly folks who are engaged in some sort of livable communities work or community leaders. And then the Community Challenge Grant website, which I will get to next. So as part of our livable communities work and the age-friendly work that has been a priority for AARP now for a number of years, 6 years ago, our national Livable team unveiled the Community Challenge Grant program. So traditionally, over the last, the previous 5 years, AARP has offered over $2 million in funding with a goal each year of delivering quick change projects, quick action projects in all 50 states, plus the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and Washington, D.C. And again, so that's been the first 5 years. This year, we're actually upping that by $1 million. So $3 million is being provided to fund grants in all 50 states, plus the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and Washington, D.C. In Ohio, since 2017, 18 communities and projects have received funding totaling $248,000 in support. And since 2020, my office, the AARP Ohio office, has taken the list of communities that maybe did not receive funding from our national office and provided funding of our own to support projects that meet the criteria and that connect with our office's mission. And over the last 2 years, we provided about $90,000 in funding to support projects at a local level. So there's not just the AARP national money that's up for grabs, but also funds provided by the AARP Ohio office. So if you're interested in applying for a challenge grant, and I'll get more into what all goes into it here in a second, but this is the timeline. So currently we are accepting applications, and you can complete your application at aarp.org/community-challenge. You have until March 22nd is the deadline, 5 p.m. to have your application in, and then all applicants will be notified by May, and then by November, all projects must be completed by November 30th. That's the most important date. Now, if you have a project that maybe needs to go over a little bit, that's something that can be worked on, but for the most part, projects need to be completed by November 30th, and your application needs to be in by 5 p.m. on March 22nd. So that's the timeline. And this is the criteria that is being considered. These are the categories for projects that we will consider. Again, the other gives it some flexibility, and depending on how it connects to the AARP mission, that's a conversation for those who will review the applications. But generally, we're looking at projects that address public spaces, transportation, housing, diversity, equity, inclusion, federal fund implementation, which I'll touch on in a second, civic engagement, and one additional that's not up here, but there's also a criteria for veterans focused and related opportunities, especially those opportunities that engage with older veterans, veterans maybe 50 and over, or getting close to the age of 50. So that's generally the categories. And again, the focus this year, as opposed to years past, is really going to be on, does the opportunity serve residents of your community aged 50 and over? Is it inclusive? Does it address disparities, both financial, health-related disparities, economic disparities, racial disparities? And are you engaging volunteers to be part of the effort and to play key roles in your community? So those are all the categories you want to consider, and guidelines that you'd want to consider if you're going to put together a application. We have added, as I mentioned, a new category for this year, which is engagement under the new federal funds. And basically what that is given the amount of money that the federal government has opened for communities to use through the American Rescue Plan and the IIJA, which is the infrastructure funding bill that was passed late in 2021, the challenge grants can be used for development and implementation of a program that would collect community engagement and comment around how those funds should be spent in your community. So that is that's a new category for this year. It's something a little bit different, but with the money that's out there, and not necessarily confusion, but just a lot of information out there, AARP believes that this is a great way to make sure that those funds will meet issues and opportunities that are identified by not just thought leaders in your community, but older adults and folks in your community as a whole. And so this has been added as a category for the 2022 challenge grants. In addition to the funding, the federal funding programs, as I mentioned to you, the veterans focused opportunity is still a new category as well. So if you do anything that, if you have an opportunity that's focused on serving veterans better, especially older veterans, that is also a category on its own that your application would be considered under. So who's eligible for the challenge grants? This is definitely, it's 501c3, 501c4, 501c6 nonprofits, and government entities and others. Other organizations will be considered. I will say this, for-profit entities and organizations from outside of the United States are not eligible. And so you'll see there the project types that we're looking to fund: permanent physical improvements, temporary demonstrations, and new innovative programs and services. And that can be anything from, we've had communities in the past build transit hubs or permanent shelters for farmers markets, to planting a pollinator garden in order to improve bee activity in an area that where there's a lot of agriculture that takes place. So it's there's a lot of really unique opportunities that have been funded. And again, these are guidelines. They're not necessarily set in stone. And opportunities will be considered on their merits as the applications come in. And once acceptance is closed, once acceptance of new applications are closed. So all applications will be judged across 3 areas of criteria, along with the concept, along with the does the project being considered meet AARP social mission criteria, which is, does it benefit older adults 50 plus, and does it engage with older adults in the community that's applying. So you'll just see it's impact, execution, innovation. It's a weighted scale. Obviously we want to fund opportunities that have a high impact, and given the short timeline, execution is very important, because that does need to be done by November 30th. And so if you're ready to go and you're in something that is ready to be, it's a project that's ready to be implemented, but just maybe needed some money, those are the ideal opportunities for the challenge grant. And then obviously, is it something different? Is it something innovative? Is it a new is it a new opportunity that nobody's thought of before? So really it comes down to impact, execution, innovation, and then does it connect to AARP's mission of serving older adults and highlighting and raising concerns and issues for older adults and getting them more engaged where they live. So the application is all online. You can go to aarp.org/community challenge. This is all in the notes, and this is in the presentation, and that's where you will create your application, submit your application. It's all through an application management system that's housed on the website. As I mentioned before, your application needs to be completed by March 22nd at 5 p.m. Otherwise, it will not be considered. But again, it's all at aarp.org/community challenge. You can also see great examples of previously funded opportunities on that site, as well as access any of our Livable Communities information and age-friendly network information, as they're all connected to our Livable Communities page there. So that's pretty much my presentation, other than these are these are the projects that were funded in 2020 and 2021 by our national office. The picture in the middle is an alleyway in Dover, New Philadelphia, that was turned into an art exhibit, an art gallery, outdoor art gallery, and that was actually funded by the AARP Ohio office. And as you'll see, so last year it was in Akron. We funded programs in Akron, Amesville, Chillicothe, Cleveland, Delaware County, and Mansfield. And in 2020 it was Cincinnati, Columbus, Dayton, Springfield, and Toledo. And then the resources that our state office provided actually hit some other areas too. As I mentioned, Dover, New Philly is one of them with the art alleyway project. So it really has had reach across the state of Ohio, both communities large and small. Obviously, Amesville with the pollinator garden was maybe the smallest last year, and then Asian Services in Action is a pretty substantial effort there to build a permanent shelter for their farmers market. So that's pretty much it. I'm happy to take questions. I would encourage you to, if you're interested, please, put in an application. The flyer that's connected here that I share here, you can share it with others. Please spread the word on this. All we really want to do is we want to see, as many opportunities brought to AARP as possible for consideration and funding. This is my contact information here on the left side of the screen. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Phone call, email is fine. And then on the right hand side here, you'll see obviously the community challenge link, the website for the AARP Ohio office, and then our general livable communities and age-friendly information there. So I'm happy to take any questions, and I appreciate you listening to me, and I hope it was a beneficial use of your time.
Okay, thank you so much, Doug. We have our first question in, and the rest of you start typing them in. Patrick wants to know, are these funds for bricks and sticks, design services, and programming? I know you covered that, but maybe you can elaborate on those categories and some samples again.
Sure, yeah, I love that, bricks and sticks. So these would fund, these can be used for bricks and sticks. This could also be used for development. It's sort of the one place that they're really not, the one category where I think they're not really to be used is like hiring staff, because they're not meant to be, to help build permanent staff at a location, right? So they really are sort of the short-term opportunities. Building infrastructure, building something that's going to stay there as a project works well. What was the other category? I missed it that they asked about.
The programming.
Oh yeah. So as long as the programming is launched, before November 30th, if it's going to go on, beyond November 30th, that's fine. As long as it's, that's absolutely something that can be used. This can be used for. That's a perfectly valid use of the funds. So.
Okay.
And I'm sorry. Do they want other examples too? I apologize.
Patrick, please. I think that answered his questions. He said,
okay.
Thanks. Will projects still be considered if the focus is not necessarily on adults 50 and older?
Yes, it will. It's that guideline was added this year because I think we funded a lot of projects in the in previous years across the country that weren't necessarily specifically targeted at 50 plus older adults. Obviously, it connects more to our mission, but if it's a more general opportunity, it will still be considered. It's just that giving that sort of that specific mission does help with the weighting. But yeah, no, it won't. Projects won't be discounted if they don't specifically target people 50 plus.
Okay, the next question. Could it be used to fund vouchers for produce for seniors at farmers market?
I want to say yes, but let me double check on that. And I can, if the person asked that question, you could just shoot me an email. I will double check on that.
Okay, well,
That's not
Evelyn, we'll get your
for
email
farmers market,
to.
but I don't know if necessarily it was for the vouchers, but I'll ask.
Okay, great question. What is the average grant award?
Sure.
And is there a match requirement, either cash or in kind?
Sure. The average grant is around $11,000 and there's no match requirement. So, in Ohio, we've seen grants as big as $28,000 and as small as $1,000. And I think nationally, the smallest grant they funded in 2021 was $500. And again, sort of the higher end was in that, closer to $35,000 to $40,000. But the average grant has been $11,000, give or take.
Doug, is there a budget for Ohio specifically that you anticipate? We've got $1 million that we're targeting for Ohio or something like that?
No, and no, in fact, that's not it. We don't know. Basically the way that this works is the Ohio office will go through the applications that are submitted in Ohio, and we will make a recommendation to our national office for like 10 of these opportunities, and they will fund the ones that they believe, meet the criteria best and that they would like to see, enacted. So we don't know how much they're going to spend on Ohio versus any other state. So it really does come down to, how well do the opportunities connect with, AARP's mission, the criteria, the challenge grants. And then that's why also our office will look at maybe some of the ones that aren't funded and say, okay, these connect really well to, to our social mission. That one I can tell you, we do have a more specific budget, and it's a lot less than the national office has, but it's still, enough to make substantial impact if, for the right opportunity.
In the last 2 years, how many applications have you received and how many of those were funded, kind of?
Sure. So we received 115 applications last year, and between our office and the national office, we funded 12.
Okay.
And then the year before, I want to say it was like 85 applications were submitted, and again, we funded like 9 or 10 opportunities total between the national office and the AARP state office. And again, that was in 2020 when the world was topsy-turvy.
With the project timeline being fairly finite, really, wrapping it up by November, can you reflect on projects that are kind of underway that you can add funding to or something like that? Because it's kind of hard, I would say, to initiate and plan for a project and submit it by March 22nd. It's more likely to be a project that they already have on board coming this year.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I mean, that's where when our national team came up with the challenge grant concept, that's more of what they were looking for, were those opportunities that were either, quote unquote, shovel ready or maybe in process that needed some additional funding just to sort of get them to the finish line. So that would be, that's the original, that's the original reasoning behind this, was just to help those communities deliver on those projects that, were either shovel ready but needed funding or were in process and could use some more. So that's absolutely, a valid use of the funds and really what we're looking for. I think there is a, pardon the pun, there's a challenge, right, in taking something, finding out you're going to be funded in May and having to deliver it by November 30th. Now, I will say this too, a couple of the projects that were funded in 2020 did bleed over into 2021, just given sort of the, obviously the complications in 2020, but also some of the complications that they met in delivering on the, on what they had proposed, on the projects they had proposed. So it's not like we're going to pull your funding if you say we're not done by November 30th, but ideally they're opportunities that are done by November 30th. So, but again, that's where you'd work with the state office on that, and just let us know, keep us up to date. We want to know how you're doing anyway with it, and maybe how we can support each of those opportunities once they're approved for funding or they receive their funding.
So they really need to look around and look at what projects they have on the table right now and see which projects of those most identify with AARP's goals and mission there.
Correct. Yes, and that's where I included the if you look at the flyer that was included, it really does sort of break down even more sort of what the guardrails are, what the committee is really looking for, when the grants are submitted. So, there's a little bit more information there than I even included in my PowerPoint. So I didn't want to bore everybody with a lot of detail, but I realized I'm 30 minutes shorter than we thought we would be. So,
yeah, you could always bring it up if you wanted to, I guess. So again, kind of going back to people's odds of getting it, if you've got a good project, go for it. But it sounds like you've been funding like 10% of the applications, which isn't bad odds. Do you think there's going to be overall more money available because of all of this, ARPA money and such?
I don't know if there'd be more money available as much as I think that, they've refined the process to be more specific in what's being asked. So I think that we're going to get a lot more, and as I've looked at, sort of, maybe what's coming in already, right? Folks are the applications that we've seen already are speaking more to the guidelines that are there than maybe they have been in the past. So I think we probably will have as many applications that we did last year, and I think that they'll be harder to choose from actually, because we're going to have more opportunities that are speaking more to the guidelines and to our mission. And so, but again, that's where, the other thing too is, from my office's perspective, if it's not something that we fund through our, through the money we've set aside or through the national, through the national program, it's still something that, if it looks like it touches on our mission, we will still work with you if you want. Maybe we can't fund it, but maybe we can support the opportunity or help identify other means of funding and be good partners there. So there's a couple routes to take if you don't receive the funding initially, and that's where our office is here to help with that, and maybe even look at a partnership or potential collaboration of some kind.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Just a PSA right now, Heritage Ohio's April training, we are partnering with AARP. So it will still be virtual. That's AARP's rules. We're ready to start meeting in person, but on the mornings of Wednesday and Thursday, April 20th and 21st, we'll be doing a lot of programming on livable cities with AARP because they have very extensive programming. So the Heritage Ohio training registration is not up yet, but be watching for that on April 20th and 21st for those virtual trainings. Because I think, as Doug said, the design aspects and a lot of the programming aspects, if it's age friendly, it's good for everybody, even though we're targeting maybe 50 and over, which is pretty darn young. We haven't had any other questions come in. Please, if you have some questions, get those in. Doug is always available, though, through his phone number and email, which you see there. And of course, you can download those handouts. And this webinar, like I said, will be recorded. You can share with other people in your community who you think might be a good match for this. Doug, any final parting advice?
The other piece is, for folks who are on here who may be part of, smaller communities or haven't thought about, the age-friendly network, it really is enrollment in the age-friendly network really is a great opportunity to take a look at your community from a different perspective, and to really engage with folks from around your community in improving, making those improvements and making those changes that you'd like to see, that maybe they would like to see, that you would like to see, that maybe have not been brought up, or or you haven't found the influence yet to make those changes. The enrollment in the network and the cycle of continuous improvement, it really is a great way to provide some guidance and some guidelines on how you can make effective change in your community. And so I would just encourage anybody who's interested and taking that to their city, to their, to their city, their village, to their county, and saying, hey, this is something we'd explore. My office, I'm happy to talk with you about it. I have counterparts in Cincinnati and Central Ohio who work in an associate state director for outreach capacity, and they work with, their community partners from those regions of the state. They're happy to work with interested communities, to get more information, to have those conversations, to, and to really take a look at, do we want our city to be considered an age-friendly community? When I say city, but as a generic, but again, it's nationally we have everything from 500-person Bowdoin, Hampshire, Maine to the however many million residents in New York City, right? New York City is an age-friendly community. In Ohio, it's Columbus and Cleveland and Cincinnati are all age-friendly communities, but so are Struthers and Clinton County and Oxford and Athens, both Athens County, Athens City. So it sort of runs the gamut. So take a look at that if you're interested. Please feel free to contact me. I'm happy to have a conversation with you about what that would entail, what you should be thinking about, and how you could go about building that opportunity for your community. So
that's great. And you got to be realistic about the gray movement and how it's going to affect city design and programming in all of your communities, I think. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Doug, I haven't seen any other questions come in, so you must have covered everything. Thank you so much for this presentation.
We'll go with that, and we'll say that I'm not incredibly boring, but I just answered every question. I'll take that one. So
yeah. So for all of you participants left, watch for our next webinar coming to you in April. You'll see our e-blast, and it'll be on our website. And please reach out to Doug, and I hope a lot of you apply for this grant opportunity because you're all doing great work in your communities. Thank you so much, Doug.
thank you, Joyce. I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing from many of you. Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.